No guests. I have no sign-ins.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
good, perfect, awesome, thank you. Everybody's in place. I'm going to call this meeting to order. If you would all please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming. We start with scheduled audience to the public comment period. No one has signed up to deliver public comment tonight, so we'll move directly into the report of the secretary. May I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of our last meeting?
I'll move.
Go ahead.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of Wednesday, January 4th, 2022.
Second, Jen?
Jen, thank you. Comments? Or questions?
Just at number 1 under report of the secretary, it says the regular meeting of Wednesday 21. It should be should it be December?
Yes, that's a good point. Good catch.
Can I add something?
Please?
This doesn't happen very often. Number 5, second line down, I think it should be the Portland/Wainfleet Red Riots. I think it's a co-op team.
Oh, okay.
This is under report of superintendent, number 5?
Under student
Student
report,
report,
number 5.
number
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
Portland/Wainfleet?
Yeah, Portland/Wainfleet, I think they're a co-op team.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good catch.
And I'm guessing that probably should be the South Portland/Wainfleet if it's the Red Riots. I think it's South Portland. Can I just double check that? We'll make this.
Sure.
Mhm.
Change. Yeah, South, yeah, they are.
South Portland/Wainfleet.
Yeah, I think Wainfleet's one word, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Good. Anybody have anything else? Okay. All in favor? That is 4-0. Thank you very much. That moves us into the report of the chair. We did have a town officials meeting, actually a quite productive town officials meeting on January 11th. Jen, did you want to read from your notes?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So South Berwick was in attendance. Mr. Pellerin talked a lot about the budget process about to begin in town for them, and that they're struggling with the same things that we all are as far as cost increases. The ambulance service was a significant increase for them. Growth and expansion increased costs overall, and they're going to need to balance that with what the taxpayers can do, so that's a concern of his. In Elliott, similar concerns were echoed by Mr. Sullivan. The budget season's underway for them. Prices overall have increased. So talked sort of about, how the district budget will impact the town budget and just wanting to be conscious of that, and talked about the mill rate. And Mr. Sullivan talked about, just the need for the people in town to see the value in investing back into the town, and hopes that taxpayers will see that. Mr. Caverly talked about increased electricity costs, the boiler costs, talked about enrollment, so some of the things that he's looking at when starting the budget process for here. Waiting still to hear on the state subsidy, which will hopefully come in a few weeks, and see how that number will impact the budget and the towns. Still looking at some lighting options in the district. Cardboard was one of the things that we had talked about with the towns, and it seemed like the towns were initially getting paid to dispose of cardboard, but now actually have to pay to get rid of cardboard. So we were initially thinking maybe we'd sort of partner with the town to get rid of the cardboard, but it sounds like that is not an option right now. Let's see, Mr. Cavalier just sort of updated them about the Maine Youth Integrated Health Survey results. Recycling, again, cardboard, and that the district has a snowplow bid out for next year. Diesel costs increase will affect that. And then new business, Elliot will be asking the townspeople about a new town hall. And they're considering eventually moving voting over there and out of the schools. And then same with the Elliott Community Service, am I saying that right? The ECSD? Yeah, Community Service
Yeah.
Department, yeah, would move there, but that's a couple years away.
Yeah.
I think that's it. What did I
Yeah.
miss?
I think the one thing, Mr. Sullivan, he said new town hall and then corrected himself and said renovated. So,
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really about renovations. We
Okay.
don't want to start any rumors.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, that was good. That's-
I'm going to come out of his chair at home, wait a second.
Yes, wait, sorry, Mr. Sullivan.
Okay, and then secondly, this says legislative update. I actually attended the January meeting of the Maine School Board Association, and the commissioner of the Department of Education, Pender Macon, actually came to the meeting via Zoom and gave us an update on priorities and things that are happening this year, reiterating the governor's commitment to the 55% funding, talked about changes that are coming to the funding formulas. They're going to start looking at income taxes in the towns as well as property taxes to see if those two things are out of balance, and there may be a funding formula term that will account for that. They're incorporating the minimum 40K salary into the formula now, so that will be accounted for. She did say in the course of all of this that the ED 279s, the funding for the towns, they're targeting early in the week of January 23rd, so that's next week is when we should see those. You did mention that there were changes to the Maine human rights law that are being worked now. There's rule changes that will come as a result of that, so policy committee should probably be on the lookout for that.
Okay.
I did incidentally bump into Representative Roberts today at the hairdressers, of all places. She said that the language corrections around sexual orientation and gender identity are being made. That's been submitted as a bill. So yeah, that's happening.
Great.
That's good. Yeah, that's the update I had for that for MSBA. So, questions or comments on that? Okay, good. That moves us into the report of the superintendent.
Fantastic. Today we're going to start off with a presentation from Principal Creech and Ms. Chris Bison. They will share a little bit of the work that's happening at Marshall Middle School with our Allied Arts program. The idea behind this was really just to kind of give you a sense of the student experience. And so one of the things that I really focus on is like what do all students get and what do all students need. And so when we talk about Allied Arts, I think it's important just to understand kind of there is a method to the specials at the middle school and what that looks like. So, Principal Creech.
Thank you. So, good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to meet with you tonight. We're going to be presenting the Allied Arts program. I've asked Christy Brown, who is team leader, and an instrumental part of the work we do at the middle school to make the presentation. I'm just going to briefly share with you that prior to coming to Marshwood, I was in a high school for over 30 years. And my experiences there were unique to what we do at the middle school. But after the first year at the middle school, I fell in love with our approach as a school. And you're going to hear some of that later on with what we're doing in our presentation with the high school. But I feel like one of the strongest things that we do is educating the whole child. And the model's been put in place years and years ago of ensuring every student gets an opportunity to be a part of the different Allied Arts offerings that we have and immerse themselves in things that perhaps is going to spark a passion in them. I think that's an integral part of the work we do to educate the whole child. And so Chris is going to be here tonight to share with you the details of our programs and what we have in place.
Thank you, Principal Creech, and thank you, Board. It is a pleasure to share with you the unique learning opportunities that our students have through the Allied Arts. I'd like to start with our first slide. Our mission statement for our Allied Arts is to develop our lifelong learners, promote the self-esteem, foster cultural participation, create outlets for self-expression, and encourage real-life explorations through a diverse offering of Allied Art courses. What I share with you tonight will be based upon that core mission statement that all of our students and staff strive for daily in the classroom. We'd also like to include that, as Principal Creech touched upon, that our program is fully inclusive and offered to all students every quarter, every grade level. Next slide. This slide encompasses opportunity, and our classes provide opportunities to explore diverse cultures, activities, technologies through our collaborations in the physical, culinary, performing, linguistic, technological, visual, and health-related arts. We have 9 staff who are offering all of these programs at various levels that travel from grade 6 and build upon the growth of grade 6 into grade 7, and then progressing into the curriculum that's explored in grade 8. Our investment is in the whole child, and we are scaffolding each year among both the subjects and among what our staff and students bring to us. We are connecting with the core curriculum of ELA, social studies, science, and math, and you'll see in some of the later slides what some of those connections look like that are interdisciplinary. We also have a combination of collaborative and individual experiences, something that makes our Allied Arts unique and also a core strength is that there are opportunities for students to share individual learning as well as many collaborative outlets. We also have an embedded social emotional learning curriculum throughout all of the courses, developing emotional intelligence not only for themselves, but with each other. Next slide. These are the list of courses that are considered required for all grade 6 students, and then the exploratory courses which are offered to the students. We like to call our Allied Arts courses exploratory, and that every student will receive every one of those disciplines prior to leaving their 8th grade year. As well with this, I like to think of purpose with this slide. They are diverse and unique to Marshwood Middle School. In researching several of our area middle schools, Marshwood is certainly one of the highest numbers of different offerings for their students, and the fact that they are offered to all 3 grade levels. Some schools are specific, grade specific. We only offer this in grade 8 or grade 6, whereas these are offered every year to all students. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a quick
Yes,
question?
sure.
Just wondering about the Spanish. I know that they
Yes.
take the Allied Arts quarterly, yes?
You'll see
So-
later in the slides that Spanish is required of all students in grade 7. And then there is an exploratory experience for students in 8th grade that is the equivalent of Spanish 1 that's offered here as a freshman course.
So is it required for the whole year or just for a quarter?
These are quarterly.
Quarterly, okay.
Unique to some of these that I'll explain in later slides is that there are some that are offered semesterly or for the whole year.
Chris, just for clarity, though, the
Sure.
8th grade Spanish class that meets the Spanish 1 requirement is a full year course.
Okay,
That's a little bit different than the exploratories in 6th
Okay.
and 7th grade. Just
thanks.
Thank you for asking. Our Allied Arts objectives, I went through and selected many of the opportunities that our students experience and then highlighted that with the different types of learning styles and objectives that are found in each of our classrooms. Experiential learning exists in all 9 faculties' classroom. We have interdisciplinary study as well as self-efficacy, which is a large area of exploration and development for our middle school students. Some of these projects and units are considered a kind of a sampling of how can I possibly do something if I've never tried it before. And so the students are exposed in small steps and stages, not only to develop their own personal interest, but also their own confidence in exploring something that's brand new. I know as the music and choral director at the school, several students will come in saying, I don't listen to music, I don't play a guitar. And that is absolutely perfect, because then we are molding, each of the faculty are molding those children to become the learners that they can become. And we help them to trust that they can succeed in that. Next slide. And by the way, these are all very up-to-date photos. These are all from this school year. We explore several diverse technologies. I've given an example. On the right is the composing platform called Soundtrap that the students use in the music classrooms. And to the left is Scratch, used in our technology classrooms. We have a definite STEAM integration. Our technology program works with robotics, as well as developing cartoon characters that are telling a story. The students in grade 6, the course is called Composing Music, where those students start from the very beginning and go all the way through to composing through rap units, different genres, commercials, even scoring music to accompany and sound effects to accompany videos. And in this area, we also grow to not only work with the technology, but also in a later slide, you'll see that the students are actually working as audio technicians, where they are manipulating sounds, bending pitches, and actually working to create very unique styles that are 100% theirs, not just a packaged program that's clicked and dropped. Next slide. I took 2 pictures here of our physical education program. I'm sure you're all aware of the very unique climbing unit that is offered at Marshwood Middle School. It is certainly a highlight of the physical education curriculum, but it is not the only unit. And anyone who has climbed before knows that there is a large element of trust. I can say firsthand that the classroom of the allied art instructor is one where we are constantly working together with our students to help create that area of trust, and through that to help discover their own learning. Also unique is every student is climbing at their level. They certainly have the staff and support that they need, as well as 100% student belaying, not staff. And the students are climbing at the level that's comfortable for them with great support. I also wanted to share in this area that the team relationships, team is not just an athletic word. And I think that's very important for our students to discover. Every class has a cooperative embedded element in it. Some classes are 100% built upon the collaborative framework, but every one of the allied art classes have the collaboration as part of their work. Next slide. The demonstrating the growth in our knowledge through belonging, demonstrating, collaborating, and performing. One of the huge elements of allied classrooms is that we are learning beyond our 4 walls. And this is very evident when you walk through our school. You will see maybe students who are cutting fabric, spreading things out because their project is immense, and creating body pillows and needing that amount of space. or the chorus sometimes sings in the hallways. I teach with my door open most of the time. We also have word walls that extend out where folks who may not be in that class have an opportunity to be a part of that class by writing in their own thoughts. Our art, health, music, cooking, Spanish classes all currently have hallway displays. Our concerts sometimes extend to the school day. We've done 2 this year, and extending courses beyond. Sometimes we have units that students have approached the staff that they want to do deeper learning, and they'd like to do that during lunches. We recently had some rock guitar performances during 8th grade lunch that came from the students. Climbing has evolved into a summer program. The piano and guitar classes offered in 7th and 8th grade respectively have become an official rock band for the last 5 years. There's an annual talent show that has featured painting, art, gymnastics, video of riding our horses, and taekwondo and more. Next slide. Our social emotional connections, these photos all came from a project from within the chorus classroom, but extended to the entire school. There was a guest speaker who came, compliments of a Marshwood Education Foundation grant, and this was a whole school project where every student and staff member created a word that summarized who they are. You'll see fighter, fun-loving, positive, empathetic, tenacious, inclusive, crazy, selfless, sporty, tolerant, outdoorsy. We had many, and then they were collaborated together to become part of a video for the gentleman who came to visit. But this was a challenge for the whole school. So our learning is not just a 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 quarter. All of those posters were part of who we were for the 2021-22 school year. Also the combination of having, next slide, of having both grade level teams. Our teams at the middle school are purple and white for 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. So there's 2 sets of teams, and the students combine only for allied arts. So you would have students in your classroom that are from both grade level teams, 7 white, 7 purple together. The only other time the students combine for that would be lunchtime, and if they had, if we had a special assembly. So that is also a very unique element that all the grade level come for that. These are our classes available in grade 7, and you will see that that has changed from the 6th grade exploration. And for visual and performing arts, the 7th grade student can take art or piano. So there's 4 offerings for your performing or visual art. And next slide. The conversational demonstration of learning is one that is always welcome. That's usually our area where we learn even more about our students, because they will share what they know from prior learning, or as a wrap-up from the class, or where we are as a formative assessment. And in this area, I highlighted both the health and the Spanish, because Spanish class is largely conversational in how our students are communicating. You'll see in a later slide that there is a written assessment that is given out. But these demonstrations are, again, sometimes in class, sometimes as a video shared out with pen pals from other health classes, sometimes even a presentation that has become the new element for the next class. Here is our summary of how to do a chorus warm-up or an instrumental band warm-up. And the students will do that as a demonstration and then create it as a video to be shared to the next quarter. Next slide. Here in this expression, self-expression, the center photo is a Spanish project, and the two in the corners are from art. Just a few notes about this. The one in the center for Spanish, those are written entirely in Spanish. And so the student gave a summary of who they are, and their hobbies and interests were drawn to the left side and then described in Spanish on the right. In the far right-hand corner, the picture in the top left, the watercolor with the river, that was awarded on the MEA monthly magazine. And the one down at the bottom, which is our pirate from Pirates of the Caribbean, was also awarded a Maine State Award from our 7th graders. That's okay. And in the bottom left, as part of the summative assessment of what they've learned this year, the 7th grade students take puzzle pieces and create all of their learning from the whole quarter. And then it's pieced together as a class. And next slide. This is 2 weeks ago, I think, from the guitar class for 8th graders. In the moment, a student who was studying guitar wanted to sing the vocals of the piece we were doing. So not required in the guitar curriculum, but certainly welcomed. Students in this class were exploring bass guitar, electric guitar. We have 23 ukuleles from our fundraiser of the talent show, and 9 guitars and amps started from the MEF grant. But this becomes a full rock band. And I wanted to share that in this slide, taking guitar class to another level has come from the explorations that the students make just within the quarter. Next slide. The 2 pictures on the outside are both from technology. The students are using the 3D printers to create original art. And then the photo in the center are displays from the actual art class with their pinch pots and expressive art of who they relate to. And I do want to say with that last slide, when our art is shared out in the 2 glass displays or even on the walls of the school, not only does it invoke some wonderful compliments from peers, but also from making connections and more further compliments from our staff at the school. So further outreach outside of the classroom. Next slide, please. These classes are offered in grade 8, and I know I gave a general cursory art and PE. The actual curriculum units are deeper dives into new explorations. And so the cooking will go in advanced steps. And the real world, the 8th grade students will actually balance checkbooks, create a budget, go and buy that food, and create the whole meal of what they're doing. Next slide. These are photos from the cooking unit from our 6th grade nutrition class. And the students did, again, interdisciplinary unit. They created the artwork of what their food truck would look like. And then they, as you can see, the cups and the creations are made out of salt dough. So the students incorporated art again to create their items they were selling: churros, burritos, spaghetti with meatballs, and then displayed all of them and then cooked that food. So multi-step process of real growth, research, learning, and then sharing and tasting it with others. Next page. Our life skills program is, I actually put life skills, but it is part of our family consumer science program. We are one of the few programs, and I'm sure some of you are already aware, of still being able to offer our students family and consumer science. And it is the full deal. Our students are doing everything from cleaning all of the items after being used in the kitchen, to then folding and ironing, washing all of the aprons that are used, making sure that they have practiced and received their certification to handle particular tools, and then it escalates right through what kind of meals can we share with our classes. So a wonderful, wonderful, fully in-depth program. Next slide. I mentioned earlier that some of the skills, this is a guitar class on the left, that's the rock band that started rehearsing 2 weeks ago on the right. And like our climbing camp and after school, we have 2 technology offerings for students. Those have grown to include students from the high school who will come and receive service hours for the work that they do with our students. And that has been a fabulous benefit to have peer teaching, but to see a class grow into something even greater. Next slide. So I thought with our cooking photo, we would mention the recipe for success in allied arts is identifying the goals that we would like our students to be receiving, exposing them to those skills in every possible way that suits every learner in the classroom, building skill and confidence, which I've touched upon a few times about a real learning opportunity for students that they can take with them beyond our 4 walls, to reflect on the growth that they've done daily, weekly, quarterly, and for those classes that are offered in a year, to work in partnership with their peers and staff, and then to produce that work for others to share. Next slide. I must say that all 9 allied staff are very proud of their students, the work that they are able to offer to our students, the support that we have from our administration, both in building and with our superintendent, and the board, because it is certainly a great privilege to teach students, and I know that our staff welcome that every day, working with our students. On the next slide, I actually have our Allied Art homepage offered during the pandemic. I created 3 different slideshows so that students can access them, families can access them, and of great importance is when students are rising up or stepping up from 5th grade to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8. All of these are shared with the students. And on the next slide is the actual 6th grade one, which I'm just going to play a tiny snippet for you because I know my time is probably up. But the music was composed by the grade 6 composing music class. That's okay, go right ahead. And this offers contact for each of the allied teachers and also 4 little bullets about the curriculum in 6th grade. So I can pause it to make sure you have enough time for all of your things. Are there any questions that I can answer for you?
This was great.
Yeah, it
This
was-
was great,
thank you.
yes.
My son is in 6th grade right now, and he loves allied arts. And he actually doesn't say much because he's a 6th grade boy. But when he came home from school today, he said that he was working on a rap song, and that with his team in nutrition, he had bought a houseboat and was living in Key West.
Yes, that sounds like the perfect life.
Yes.
Oh, he loves it.
Yeah. I think we're so lucky that the middle school has allied art teachers who really get kids
Yes.
excited.
Excited.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's awesome, so thank you.
So there
Yes.
is a
Great.
little bit of pressure on the student as they kind of enter the allied arts, because in 6th grade, there's 4 required allied arts that Chris talked about, but then there's some choices. And so you come to a point where you can't do everything, and so if you want to be in chorus, you can do that all year long.
Right,
But if you do that it gets a little bit tricky when you get to 8th grade, because now you've got, how do you manage kind of what your passions are? And so we try to work with students, but that is kind of, there's some personal growth that has to take place, where we want kids to try different things and explore different things. That's why we have those required courses. The one point I do want to make, and we probably should have this conversation as we start talking about credits requirements, is that although we offer, is it still 2 high school courses? We offer Art 1, which is an art fundamentals class, and then we offer just in Spanish. We do not offer high school credit for that. And so the student could take that course and be eligible to take Spanish 1 as a freshman, but they don't get that Spanish 1 credit that would go towards their 21 and a half credits for graduation. So just to kind of give you a sense that, that there's a little bit of uniqueness. We used to do the art, but when the art program changed, years ago, was the art fundamentals was kind of the key course to be able to unlock everything else. And so they took that course in 8th grade, and that opened up, a bunch of different offerings in 9th grade. They removed that requirement at the high school now, so it didn't necessitate that any longer.
Okay.
So.
Can I just ask one question? When you say they get to choose, what point in the year or how are they offered the choice? When does that, okay, it's time to choose, happen?
So looking at the grade 6, thank you, Mr. Creech. Looking at the grade 6 curriculum, when the students decide exploratory, if they want band or chorus, they plug that in.
Okay.
And then they plug in the requireds in the afternoons. But our guidance, our school counselors will look at what have you previously taken.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that, say,
You
in
get it.
7th grade, when you step up, we'll plug you in for the requireds. And if you haven't had, a particular class yet, they will plug that in.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And it could also have a student who might have an IEP or a 504 plan that says, you want them to take this course
Okay,
for any various number of reasons. So.
great.
Great.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
I'm going to fill in just a couple of odds and ends and give Brett and David a chance to kind of gather themselves and give me a couple minutes, and I'll just fill in some of the things. I just had some things at the end I wanted to talk about. I did want to point out that the water testing came back the second round, and I know we probably would talk about that during the F&F portion, but I just want to make sure I mentioned it as well, that all of the issues with the water having the higher levels have been met, with the exception, or excuse me, have been fixed. So every faucet within the buildings is at compliance levels now. The only place that has not currently is the field house, and the reason the field house isn't done is because the water is shut down there. And so that will be taken care of in the springtime when we open the water back up again. Just a reminder for the board that our February meetings are February 1st and February 8th. They're not it's the 1st and 2nd Wednesday of the month, not the 1st and 3rd. So just a little bit of reminder about that. Dan Rose has committed to be able to be here on February 8th. From 6 to 6:45 with us to come do a board workshop. If that was still the desire of the board to go forward with that, that was the date that we were able to
Okay.
secure. Does that make sense to everybody?
Dan
Dan Rose from
Rose.
Governor Woodson, he kind of, will do that.
Say the time again?
From 6 to about 6:45.
6 to 6:45.
45 minutes
Yep.
before
Got it.
that meeting, we'll do F&F before that.
Good.
So do we still want to go forward with that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think it's very
Okay.
useful.
Also, just for board members, we are having that professional development opportunity on Friday, that if people are able to attend, please, certainly come to the central office.
Yep.
Obviously, we can't have more than 3 people there
Yeah.
as far as quorum rules go. At the same time, we're going to work out tomorrow, because I don't know what the weather's going to look like on Friday. And so I don't know if there's a fully remote option where we can give out remote pieces for everybody to be at home and watch it. I'm not sure how they're going to manage that.
Yeah.
So I'll look into that tomorrow and let you know
okay.
how
Sounds
that would
good.
work. And then just kind of the last little piece I just wanted to share with you before I turn it over to the middle school and high school again, is that I'm going to be meeting with our principals and our social workers. So we've put a lot of resources into the social work, and I want to be able to calibrate where we are with that. And so I think really having an understanding of what the goal and what the mission is really important. And so I think it's really important to take a moment in time now that we've kind of really put those resources in place for a couple of years now, and kind of find out where we are. And I know that the special ed portion of that is really clear, but I want to kind of talk a little bit about what's that look like beyond the special education, one-on-one counseling? Like, what is that role? How does it look like, how are we managing the fact that if their number one responsibility outside of the special education piece is to facilitate outside resources and there aren't any outside resources available, what do we do?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a real challenge that we have. And we did not get the Sweetser grant that was out there that we had applied for or had been part of a group that applied for. So we were kind of hoping that might kind of alleviate that and create some more opportunities for students, but that we did not get
Yep.
awarded that. So just to make everybody aware.
Okay,
I know that was a bunch of odds and ends, but just wanted to kind of give you some updates.
appreciate it.
Is the grant gifted or awarded based on need?
Yeah, and so Sweetser wrote a grant based on Kittery, York, and us, kind of all trying to work together and really around the social emotional learning piece. And so they were trying to bring some curriculums like the bar testing, those types of things across all three districts. I think part of it may have been also trying to make it more attractive to be a social worker because right now they just can't find people. And so we weren't awarded that. They're still trying to go after some other grants. We are still missing a social worker here at the high school. So we have not been able to fill that position, not Marshwood, but Sweetser is
Yep.
missing a social worker here at the high
Yep.
school. We do have a person at the middle school who started, which is great. Great Work School and Central School is good. The problem with Great Work School and Central School right now is that person is totally full from Sweetser, and so that makes it a little bit more challenging. So that as we come to, again, shrinking resources and try to, what's our next step now?
Yep.
So.
How many counselors are there normally at the high school for Sweetser?
They used to, years ago, Sweetser didn't come to the high school. And so 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, was when we opened the doors and said, look, we need to have these students who are migrating from the middle school to the high school to have those resources available. And so, used to be 0, then it became a half-time person. We said that we need a full-time person, and again, it's no cost to us. They just have to have the caseload to justify it from Sweetser's end. But right now, they just can't find anybody to fill that role. So
Yeah.
it's a little tricky. And that's about 30 to 35 students to be able to see to kind of constitute a full-time role. And so we feel very confident that we would have enough people to certainly justify that. We have that at the middle school. Those kids transition to the high
Right.
school, they don't just go away.
Right,
So,
the need doesn't disappear.
okay, great, thank you. Principal Creech and Principal Hooper, Luis.
So thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I think it's really important that you hear that Principal Hoopter and I spent time collaborating on how do we align the core values of the school district with our vision for how to produce and create safe, positive, and inclusive school environment, climate, and culture in our respective schools. It's important that school leaders collaborate. We've been doing that. We found that we pretty much have a shared vision. The vehicles by which that we accomplish this might be slightly different, but I think you're going to find tonight that at the core of our work, we're really very similar, and we thought that was important for you to know. Presentation, you're going to get an opportunity to hear how we're going to engage the community. They're going to have a similar presentation made, mutual, like he and I will come at the high school. We'll invite families, community members, to share with them exactly what we're doing in our schools, and also provide them opportunities to engage in that work, whether it be within the school, at home, or in the community. So later on in the presentation, and I'm not going to say his last name anymore out of respect, I'm going to say Brett, because I'm going to butcher it at one point. Brett will share with you exactly how that's going to look. I've provided for you slides for each one of these so you can take notes. Please, this is a pretty comprehensive presentation we're making, so I want you to have the opportunity to perhaps take some notes at the very end of my part. I can answer any questions you might have, but I think you're going to see how it all ties together as we go through this. So also Chris is going to be doing the slide presentation, and I want to thank her for the work that she does as a tremendous leader in our Allied Arts program, but she's a tremendous leader in our school. The work she's done in other areas, and I appreciate what she and the other Allied Art teachers have done at the middle school. So I think it's important to highlight the foundation for the work that we currently have in place for this year. So last year, as a school, we spent a tremendous amount of time, both students and staff, establishing what kind of school do we want to be. We decided we want to be a middle school. We want to teach the whole child. And then we started taking a look at the core values of the district, and we said, well, how do we find the best way at our middle school to immerse the core values of the district into what we do as a school? So a big part of that came with creating a positive, safe, inclusive culture where diversity is basically celebrated. So as we worked through this, we took a look at our schedule. and both students and staff realized there were things that needed to be embedded in this schedule to support exactly what we needed to accomplish. It needed to be a part of our regular life, something we do every single day. And so what you're going to learn in a minute here is exactly how we embedded 2 programs into our schedule that are highlights of why we believe we can provide exactly what we have on the screen. Next slide, please. So part of what we do is we put together an advisory program. I should have mentioned this too to begin with. I've been told in my presentations that the transitions are the highlight of my presentation. So don't fall asleep when it goes from slide to slide. It's Google Slides, so I'm limited. If I was doing PowerPoint, I'd wow you with a few things, but please pay attention to the transitions. So if you take a look at what we have here for goals, you'll note that these goals are tied to the American School Counselor Association standards for social and emotional learning. So our school counselors, and I'm going to highlight them in a minute, they've gone out and done extensive work with that organization and with other community and school associations to help us establish what are these goals going to look like and how do we do social emotional learning at our school. Next slide, please. So we decided to create a robust advisory program. This program is supposed to help the whole child develop. So we have 4 specific days. Because of our late start on Thursday, we don't have advisory or our academic support on Thursdays. But on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, here's our model. First, Mondays, the advisor will meet with every one of their students and take a look at how they're doing in their classes. They'll track their progress. Has a student been out and needs to make up some work? What type of consultation do they need? That advisor is going to spend Monday kind of coordinating the rest of the week for the student. Because I'm going to show you in a few minutes what we have for academic enrichment and support. The advisor is the same person for advisory program that does academic enrichment and support. So students at each grade level do it a little different. One grade level has what they call exit slips. They're academic electronic slips where they map out their week. I got to go make up that math test. I need help in my social studies. I have an art project I have to finish. That is taken care of during advisory on Mondays. Tuesdays are designated for our social emotional learning. I'm going to highlight that in detail tonight because that's tied directly to those 4 goals I showed you at the beginning. Wednesdays are team and grade level activities. Now, team leaders have come to me all the time last year saying, we've got this great idea. This is what we're currently doing with our teams. We need time to have some of these learning activities. Well, now, instead of taking it out of some of their classrooms, they are able to have a specific allocated time on Wednesdays, 30 minutes, to do team or grade level activities. And a few of those I'm going to highlight down the road. And finally, the school-wide activities. That doesn't mean that the whole school is coming together. A school-wide activity is when we are all focusing as a school on one thing. And I'm going to show you in a slide later on, but the Veterans Day Assembly is a perfect example. That's a school-wide initiative. And so we have to provide time for them to work on these things. So that's what we do on Fridays. I was going to put their pictures up here, and they found out and got very angry with me. But you need to know that our 2 school counselors are at the core of our social emotional learning work. When they found out we were going to have a social emotional learning day, they volunteered to lead our students and our staff in activities that would grow our social emotional learning. And there are a lot of resources that they're using. So I'm not going to read this to you. You can take a look at this. But one of the things that happened last summer and the summer before is they were involved in a conference. And that conference that they attended was the annual American School Counselor Association conference. And they were able to not only learn about some of the things they can do for social emotional learning, but they brought some resources back. This is one of the resources they brought back: Create a Culture of Kindness in the Middle School. Character building, lessons to foster respect and prevent bullying. So what you're going to find is a lot of the anti-bullying and some of the other things that we're trying to do, that's embedded in the culture and climate of your school. and what you're doing for social emotional learning. But we also highlight it, as you're going to find out in a minute, in various months to draw deeper attention to it and to educate our students. Next slide, please. Again, Sarah Camp and Kathleen Ring have been doing all of this work. Wait till you see the resources they put together for our students and staff in a minute. Another resource, this is an actual 2 research-based projects that find, as you can read, the most promise for reducing bullying along with other forms of aggression and conflict is the positive school climate and social and emotional learning. Next slide, please. So, a big part of what we're trying to do is exactly what this slide demonstrates. This is another resource, and it talks about prioritizing the social and emotional well-being of our students is the key factor in bullying prevention, but it talks about things like empathy and conflict resolution and all these things that should be lifelong strategies. And where do they learn this? And that's why our social emotional learning piece is so integral. And it talks about how it has to be the foundation that's laid school-wide. And that's our focus in our advisory program. Next slide, please. The Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey is another resource that provides us insight into some of the things that are challenges for our students. And so if you take a look at this particular slide, what our counselors did was they teamed up with Sally and Gina from Choose to Be Healthy Coalition at York Hospital, and they're working on what are some of the latest trends, what are things that schools are doing to combat this. And so that's another strong resource for us. And as a matter of fact, this month, thanks to those 2 resources from Choose to Be Healthy Coalition at York Hospital, we're focusing this month on mattering, that students need to feel that they matter. And I'm going to highlight that in a slide or 2. Next slide, please. So the resources. How do we go about using Tuesdays for social and emotional learning? So the first thing that's important is our school counselors needed to train our staff. Now, just like any new initiative, one of the most important things is that staff are invested in it, but also they need to be really confident. Not all staff members have been trained or are confident in dealing with social and emotional learning activities. So our school counselors created different activities and trained them on the significance of those, like a circle. How do you do a circle at the very beginning, like we've seen before in restorative practices? And what do you try to accomplish with that? And we actually had them train the staff at a faculty meeting, and then they actually did circles on 2 or 3 different trainings, and they got a chance to practice it. And teachers that I know sometimes are hesitant because they lack the confidence. All of a sudden you see them smiling, engaged, and say, I feel much better about my role in this. Here are some of the other things that they do that gives us this comprehensive program. So one is we have a calendar of what we're going to be doing each month. Can you highlight that first one, please? It's not coming up. David, this calendar's not coming up. Did you click on it? So we're gonna be showing you the SEL advisory calendar, and you'll see the planning that's gone into place. So you'll see September was about making connections and the goals we had associated with it. And October is Bullying Prevention Month. So specific goals that were tied to the work we were doing for social emotional learning for anti-bullying. November, you can see, and I'm not going to read all of them, but you'll see that we have goals in place for whatever we're going to be focusing on for that particular month. And sometimes these are national goals. This is Anti-Bullying Month, so we chose to do that. Or it might be Raising Suicide Awareness Month. We did something associated with that as well. So they have this, and by they I mean our advisors, to guide them on what we're doing. But there's even more that they do to prepare them for how to actually carry out what we're trying to do for goals. Can you go to the other one, please?
Is this new from this year? Yeah, great work.
So,
It's all staff and student led. So let me show you, for example, let's take Anti-Bullying Month, October. So the first Tuesday in October, if you look at the October 4th, So there's the theme. Here's an agenda for them. And as you scroll down, it talks about activities that can be done in the advisory. And what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and what our outcomes are. These are lesson plans for that Tuesday. And anytime they need help, Sarah and Kathleen are there. They'll either go in and actually put the class through it, or they'll meet with the teachers in advance. But we basically have a syllabus for what we're going to do for social emotional learning for the school year, with topics and goals. And we have lesson plans with various activities that they can choose to use throughout the school year. Now, this is Sarah Camp and Kathleen Ring, with those other resources that I listed earlier, working together to create this comprehensive program for our kids and staff. Did you have a question?
I just was wondering who put this together, but you answered it.
This is all, and I was going to put their pictures up and their names, and Sarah Camp
We
was very
know,
upset with me, so I'm
yes.
honoring and respecting her wish. But I'm going to use her name at least 12 times today. So it's not just important for us to use this as a focus, but it's really important, like everything else we do in a school, especially what Chris mentioned. How do you make sure staff have the resources and the confidence and the skill set to implement what we're doing? And I'm going to tell you, I know last year we were coming out of the pandemic, and it was a tough 3 years for every school community, but the difference in our school right now in climate and culture compared to last year is like night and day. And every staff member tells me it absolutely is tied to the work we're doing with SEL. Next slide, please. I know you have. I apologize, we didn't know we had to go in and out. And the last piece is, she'll probably have to go and show it. If you look at this other piece, it's not just Marshwood Middle School, and it's not just that collaborative in the York County area. Yep. This is a statewide initiative. And this site that I'm going to bring up, I haven't registered the site, so if Sarah or Kathleen are here, they could show you. But there's all kinds of resources. You can go to this site and gather more resources and connect with various people that are tied to social emotional learning to grow your program. Thank you.
Is it possible to get this on our website, on the board website, so that,
PowerPoint?
well, the resources for the anti-bullying specifically? I think that would be good for parents to have access to that.
I'll ask them to do that.
Yeah.
And of course, when they come to our meeting, we're going to provide them with resources like that too,
Yeah.
links and other information.
Perfect.
There'll be more things tied directly to a parent or community member's role in that presentation. This is just to kind
Yeah.
of give you an overview.
Thanks.
So here's an example. It's not just on Tuesday advisories. So on Fridays, this is a school-wide activity. So right now, it's about mattering. And you can't read these, but this is similar to what I'm going to talk to you about in a minute with the Yellow Tulip Project. So basically, what they're doing is they want to focus on why every student needs to realize that they matter. So if you look at the left side, it says, you matter in the world needs you because, and they write things on the right. So what this says right here is, basically, list what you think makes you feel like you matter in your school. What's important to you? And similar to when we did our Yellow Tulip Project, which was about hope, students are on their own coming up there and putting things. And when you see kids going into the cafeteria for lunch, they stop and they read this. And they start to see, hey, these are some of the things I'm thinking about. Other people are like me. And it starts to create that sense of community that's important for a school where people realize we're all kind of going through the same things. So how do we grow our culture and climate? How do we do what we said our first goal was? Have a positive, inclusive environment that celebrates diversity. Next slide, please. So I wanted to highlight this one because I feel really strong about this one. I have a personal connection with the young lady that's there. So years and years ago, I attended the Maine Principals Association Principal Conference. And presenting was Julia Hanson and her mother. And Julia and her mom talked a little bit about Julia's experience. And then I watched her TED Talk later. So she lost 2 friends from suicide. And she started contemplating suicide. And she decided, I need to do something. I need to do something different. And she also was bothered by the fact that there's a stigma associated with mental health. People don't want to talk about it. And because so many people don't want to talk about it, so many people end up suffering through mental health and never really getting the support they need. So she created the Yellow Tulip Project, and it accomplishes two things. One, it starts to erase the stigma associated with mental health. And two, it starts to develop this sense of community like you saw on the board, where people start to talk about what gives them hope, what makes them hopeful, and they start focus on positive things. And so Julie and her mom came to one of the schools I was at, and a student group took a hold of it and created the Yellow Tulip Project. A second school I was at, same thing happened. They came, and the presentation is so powerful that the students just immediately said, we want to be a part of that as a school. Our student council, I never even brought it up to them. They called me in one day and said, hey, we're interested in the Yellow Tulip Project. What do you think? I said, tell me about it. Wanted to see what they knew. They are doing the same thing at our school. And so one of the things that happens is the school counselors worked with the student council, and they created a board of hope. It was all these tulips where people put what they were hopeful for. And there was 2 full boards going into the cafeteria. And I would stand in the lobby and watch, and kids constantly stopped all day long and read and started to relate to what was being said. The other piece is Julia came up with the Hope Garden. So what, in a lot of schools and school districts, they'll have some kind of ceremony in October where they'll actually go out, because it's Suicide Awareness Month. They'll go out, they'll plant tulips, but they'll have some ceremony. They'll play music, poetry, they'll have some people speak about their personal experiences. And then they plant those, and they end up blooming in the spring, where most of us start to feel hopeful because the snow stopped, hopefully, and it's sun. The reason it is a personal thing for me is I'll tell you the impact it had in one of the schools I was in. When I was at Scarborough High School, a group of students, after they heard Julie and her mom speak, came and talked to me. And they said, we need your permission to do something. We don't think the staff gets it. We don't think they understand. It's not that they don't care, but we don't think they understand what we do every single day, what we come to school with. So 6 very courageous high school students shared with me what they were going to say and stood in front of 150 staff members and shared with them their mental health issues, things that they brought to school every single day, and talked about how so many other students were going through the same thing. My staff said it was the most powerful experience they had had in education because they just didn't know, because people don't want to talk about mental health. That day I saw people crying, hugging. I'm talking about the staff members, and later on the staff come to me and say, we want to support this student group, and we want to start raising awareness not just in our school but in our community. Powerful, student-led. And so these things that are happening in our middle school now too. And it's a part of what we're trying to create as a culture. So I wanted to highlight that for you because I think it gives us hope that we can start to grow our students in social emotional learning like we need to. Next slide, please. And she's a fantastic young lady, by the way. So in addition to that, and this might seem like it's off topic, but it really isn't. Another key component for helping students have a positive experience is what we call academic enrichment and support time. 30 minutes a day, 4 days a week, where students can go and get help. They can do enrichment activities. They can have, as you see here, the art teacher doesn't do art club anymore, couldn't do it this year, but wanted to give them an opportunity to express themselves. So they come to her during A East, and they create, they call it Embrace Creative Freedom. They're doing it on their own time, and they're starting to put these things around the school. It's an enrichment activity. So our academic enrichment and support time, or we call A East, is not just tied to academic support, it's tied to enrichment activities too. Students going down and working with Chris on guitar, all kinds of things like that. Growing our students, the whole child. The advisor for A East is the advisor for the advisory program. That's the one that meets with them on Monday and says, you need help in these areas? We'll have the same group of students during A East and can guide them to where they want to go. So it's all connected.
David, just for clarity, that's also the time that if a student need to make up a test or get extra help in math, that would be not the time that they would do that as well.
Right, any form of academic support, right. Yes, thank you. So it can't just be what we prescribe, right? We want to grow student engagement. And I think that's one of the most important things we're doing right now at Marshwood Middle School, is we're giving voice to students and staff. And not just giving them voice, but empowering them and embracing what they have for ideas and trying them. So here's an example. I'm going to give you a few examples. So one of them was the student council. They worked with Sarah Camp and Kathleen Ring to create the Yellow Tulip Project. I described to you what they're doing there. They're the one that took the initiative and brought it to me, and then I connected them with Sarah and Kathleen. Civil rights team, and I want to make sure I get this right because they've done some wonderful things that I spoke with. Katie Williams and Renee Caverly are the advisors for this group. So listen to some of the things that they have done. So last year, during the holidays, in a lot of schools, there's apprehension about what kind of celebration you can have. And our civil rights team realized that. So they went out and they wanted to find out, what do people celebrate? What type of cultures are represented in our school? How can we demonstrate those celebrations in our lobby? So they spoke to students. They gave a presentation to the staff to make sure the staff would support it. They took a survey and sent it out to the entire student body and found, what do you celebrate during the year? What's a part of your family's culture, your personal culture? And then they displayed it in December in our school so that every student in that school, whatever their culture is, felt they were represented. Huge, and that's the inclusivity we're talking about and celebrating diversity. Another thing they do is called Day of Welcome. And they usually do that during the AE's time. It was Hawk time last year. They conduct interviews. They're talking about educating the school on the 6 protected categories. And why are they protected categories? And why is it important? That's another thing that they do to highlight the categories of race, color, national origin, sex, age, and disability. So our students are learning about it, but not just that, they're understanding that we're all different. That's the diversity piece. And that we need to honor our differences. I always tell students, it'd be pretty boring if everybody was the same. Our diversity makes us stronger and makes us more interesting as a school. Next slide, please. And then lastly, this is an important part of what we do as a school because we want to provide a safe, positive, and inclusive school environment. So why is this an important part? Students say, I always start when we do the emergency procedures and say that when my wife and I would drop our daughters off to school, the single most important thing for us was that the school was going to take care of them and keep them safe. And I believe that's our number one priority. We have to make sure that our staff has the training to respond in any emergency, that we're safe in the things that we do day to day. And we then need to train our students on their role during an emergency. So as you know, as Superintendent Caverly has pointed out, we have been rolling out over the last year and a half ALICE. So we've already trained our staff. We have 8 individuals who were trained in ALICE to be trainers. So we have teachers training teachers and students. They trained our staff last year and this fall. Now we're in the phase of training our students. We've already educated them on what ALICE means. Now we're going to start doing some things, hands-on practice of some of those responses. This is a part of creating a safe school and making people in the school feel comfortable that if there is an emergency or something that isn't typical or unsafe, they know what their role is. Last slide, please. And lastly, at the last faculty meeting, it's January. We're halfway through the school year. The staff hear me say this all the time. We need to be reflective as educators. Every conversation, every lesson, every day, every unit, every week, every month. This work we're doing is critical work for our school. So we paused, and it's time for us to reflect. So within interdisciplinary groups, they talked about what are the benefits to our advisory program and what are some challenges we're facing. We did the same thing with A East. We did the same thing with the ALICE program. They now are meeting within their teams and grade levels because of the commonality of the work they do to do the same thing. We're going to take the interdisciplinary group feedback and the team grade level feedback, and we're going to look at what's working well and how do we continue to grow it. What are the challenges we have right now and how do we mitigate that? And so we're pausing, reflecting, and then we're going to work this second half of the year of improving everything we have in place. So I hope you took good notes. So at this time, I'm finished. Do you have any questions from my part?
No, I thank you very much for this presentation. I see that you've worked very hard to shift the culture, and this is, yeah, it's a good job. This is great.
Thank you.
What she said.
I think just to give, the middle school, it's props. To change a schedule at a middle school
Yeah.
is very difficult. So just keep in mind that a middle school has 3 basically buildings running under one roof.
Right.
And so to create time where everybody's free at the same time, that's tricky. And so the schedule that Principal Creech, his team put together, I think is a wonderful step in that direction, where reimagined what allied arts might look like and how they're, still keeping the options for students, but at the same time kind of changing up how people get their prep time, and really just rethinking that has really enabled these things to take off. So I just really need to, from a structural and framework standpoint, this is great work, but creating the schedule to do it's a whole nother beast, which is just something you don't see. This stuff doesn't happen, particularly in the middle school.
So as I transition to Brett, I just wanted to end on something I think is the most important thing for you to hear from this. This is a result of our staff. This is we. We have incredible team leaders, and we have embraced what we need to do for our students and put them first. And not only is it from our teachers, but our students are immersed in this as well. So this is going to be successful because it's we as a school, and I wanted to leave you with that.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And kudos to you too, Mr. Creech, because it takes collaboration and it takes a leader that allows for educators to think outside the box and to work together to create this schedule that allows for this. So I think, yeah, this is very nice to see.
Thank you.
Yeah, I second
Thank you.
what Heather says. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Yes.
He's definitely a tough act to follow.
Ah,
So when David and I started to meet and talk about how we were going to start to roll out this presentation and start to get a little bit of insight into what was being done at the middle school and what we're trying to accomplish at the high school, it just amazed me the similarities of what our goals were, what we wanted to do to involve our students and our staff to create a program that was really solid. I will say, from my knowledge of our advisory program over the last few years, is it's something that is developing and evolving. And a group of teachers took on the challenges last year, and it was a lot. It was a lot of work that they had to do and a lot of time that they spent on it. And really, it became too much. And so when I came on board, we started to talk with that group about how do we make this more sustainable over time, and how do we involve kids in this process? Because we can get kids involved in it, then we can create a program that's great. One of the things that I think that we've discussed early on was we want to be proactive. We want to put things in place that helps educate kids on how to interact with each other, how to have success, how to treat people with respect, versus reactive, where we have to deal with situations that happen and we have to constantly manage that end of it. What I will say is those structures are common for what we're trying to do. And what excites me about what he's doing and what we're trying to build is I think we're really going to see a positive growth in our advisory program over the next several years. That is really exciting because he's laying the foundation, we're building on the foundation, and it's going to just continue to grow each year. We do a number of things, whether we're doing it through our advisory program or we're doing some announcements in our TV screens reflect the anti-bullying messages, or different monthly themes that go along with that to provide that safe learning environment. We've had a very low number of incidents, and when I say incidents, reported.
Yeah.
We deal with 100% of the reports we get. We've had a very low number of reports for bullying and harassment so far this year. The MIAS data that we saw earlier this year has really driven us forward into we've got to take some steps forward and put some things in place to have our advisors be that sound and that connection to students as they go through that. And then of course, we have the Brown Center coming in March to work with our staff to teach them the skills so that they can work with those students, whether it's circles or restorative practices or just building community in their classrooms. So. Some of those supports that we do have in place that we've really been emphasizing and tying together is our MTSS. We have peer tutoring in this room right here every day, which has really gone well. The norm setting that teachers are putting in their classrooms. We've had some faculty and staff attend restorative practices workshop to develop that skill to work with students and staff. The referrals to our social workers and those in-house suites or counselor that Mr. Caverly was talking about. Officer McLeod is working very proactively with kids. He's out and about all day. He pops into classrooms. He's in the lunchroom. And again, he's having those communications with kids about how we treat each other and how we get along. Then, of course, counselors meet with all our students every year at some point to build those relationships. I've talked about this in other meetings. We've created monthly themes as well. They're not so much tied to national monthly themes. They're kind of our monthly themes. And we've used student groups to help develop some of those lessons. I talked, I think, last month about Celebrate the Arts and what a success that was in our school and how kids were engaged in that. This month, it's about community and connection and strengthening our school. In every activity that's been laid out on Tuesdays was created by our civil rights team. They created those lesson plans and what's being done in those. We've got diversity coming up, a wellness month at the end of the year. And again, we've got groups that are helping planning these activities, and we have some groups and committees here that are going to continue to work the second half of the year with some of those different months and those themes. This is just one example. Annabelle, you're in civil rights.
Yep.
You guys helped create this with Miss England. This is next Tuesday's activity. I just want to do one quick example. I hate to ask you to change screens, but the word wall activity directions is what this is available to teachers. They click on that hyperlink and everything's laid out for them, everything that they need to do and the steps they take place. They're going to talk about these shared values of what they appreciate about Marshwood High School. Could you go just a little further? In order to feel respected, I need this, and as a community, we value this. And those will be put together and displayed all together on a word wall. Very similar to the work that's being done at the middle school with Mr.
Can I just
Creech.
make a point real quickly, is that just I want the board to recognize that creating the time isn't necessarily the biggest issue. Creating the curriculum for teachers to be able to implement with students is the hard part. So you notice both buildings have explicit examples of this is what you do during that time. Because I think in the past we've had advisor here at the high school and it wasn't necessarily as prescribed, and that creates a time suck in some respects, a time void maybe for a better way to say it. And so just to kind of give you an example of both buildings being able to be explicit with here's what you can do.
Yeah.
So.
The second part, our civil rights team, is we have on Fridays, we have kind of a variety of events that advisors can do on Fridays. So they provided a list of a number of different activities they can do, whether it's for social and emotional learning or just team building within their classroom. And again, the instructions are all there. They can pick and choose the ones that interest them, the ones that they like to do. Our structure, very similar. Monday is a check-in day. It's a plan for the weekday. Tuesday's the structured activity I just showed you a minute ago. Wednesday's our academic support day. And Friday is these variety of activities that they choose from to do. Twice a month, we have an extended academic enrichment time, which is 80 minutes, where kids can go to as many as 3 different teachers in that 80 minutes to get help and support. And then one of the others is an enrichment. This coming month, we do not have an enrichment activity because of the mid-year exams. But next year, we've got the My House survey. We've got a pep rally to close out before February break. And then I'm excited to say in March, we have Jermaine Moore coming in to speak with our kids. So that's going to be awesome as we hit Diversity Month. You're doing a great job. Yeah. And then, similar to Ms. Creech, we're working on our ALICEs. It's new to me. It's brand new to me. I just did my training over the Christmas break. So we're getting our Go Buckets together. We're putting together some resources. We've done an introductory level activity with our kids, and we want to expand and grow on that for the very reason he said. I want kids to feel like they're in a school where they feel safe, where they can learn, where they feel connected, where they're proud of their school, and it's all gonna grow year after year after year as we continue to work together on this. And then the last one, March 6th, from 6 to 7, Mr. Creech and I will do a similar presentation for parents who want to come out to hear about how we're trying to create this environment of a safe school, safe environment, answer the questions they have and the steps they can take if they feel like something's not right, and just communicate and build that community. My fear is that we won't get a big turnout. I'm hopeful we will, because sometimes people come and sometimes they don't, but.
I'd love to see you get the parents into one of these team building activities on stage
Yeah.
or something. That would be fun.
Yeah,
Where is that going to be?
in the auditorium.
Okay,
And we'll promote it like crazy.
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, this is great to see.
I'm
And-
And that's what we're
very-
trying to do, as, you know, we've talked about, is, you know, trying to communicate things more than one way, like an email, particularly at the high school, is not necessarily the be-all and end-all. We know we have different streams to do that through Thrill Share, social media, announcements, advisories, so.
So now, how do you share the lesson plan and the activities to the teachers? Is this like a weekly thing, or do you
Yep.
remind them? Because to Mr. Caverly's point is that, without the lesson plans or the ideas, it's easy just not to do it, or to do something different, or to stress out about it. So it's really nice that we have these here.
Each Friday, I send out a faculty bulletin that I believe, from the feedback I get, teachers love. And in that faculty bulletin talks about the today events, and then something that they probably make fun of me about, and that is I'm the king of quick links. So I have this section of quick links. So the Hawk Block Advisory is one quick link where Monday through Friday is all laid out for them every single day. And in those could be links to what they're doing, like I showed you. Today we had a staff meeting on NEASC. There was a quick link on that. And so they have everything within a finger's touch.
Okay.
And I've heard they really like it.
Yeah, I would think so. Just
Um,
having it regularly.
We have a Hawk Block committee that meets monthly, and we work like 2 months ahead. So we're set right now for February, and we're already working on the March plan for every Tuesday, and Jermaine coming and continuing through into April, May.
And remember, the feedback that you received as a board from some families in the community was that the advisory time at the high school was really an idle time last year, where that was an opportunity for kids to be in the hallways, some problems occurred. So when we, talked at the beginning of the year, you can see just the explicit work that the building's doing to try to address those issues.
A lot of work in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last quick thing, I'll put Annabelle on the spot. I was very proud. Yesterday, we met with the civil rights team as they did a presentation for administration, and she had talked about just what Mr. Creech said, that the culture in the school's different this year in a more positive way. And
Awesome.
that makes me feel great.
Yes, great, good job, thank you.
And could I just add one last thing? So I'm not trying to one of you, I promise. Exciting for me was the first time we met, he had already planned and I had planned. It was shared out. We haven't changed anything. Our schools and our leadership is like-minded, and I think that's a powerful thing for the district to know. So I was really excited about how we're gonna complement the work we're doing at each of the two buildings.
Yep.
Very good.
You
I
wanna,
appreciate it.
you wanna hug it out?
Only my family and
Yeah. All right.
Any questions?
Questions? Thank you both
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Excellent work. Thank you.
Just so our next item on the agenda, is talking about kind of our district budget goals, and I had kind of asked the board to start to think about, 2, 3, or 4 major goals that you would like us to focus on as we start to build the budget for my March presentation. I just wanted to see if there's any feedback that the board wanted to provide at this time. It's just, again, this is one of those high lever moments for the board where, this is the philosophical piece where how we invest our money really dictates what we value.
Right.
I open up to the board.
Yeah, so what I think what previously discussed, certainly the things that you laid out as the district goals at the start of the year are going to be most important to all of that. We did talk a little bit in our finance and facilities meeting earlier about potential improvements in things like recycling and energy efficiency improvements and things like that. As opportunities arise, we'd certainly consider
Okay.
looking at those as, as a feature of the budget.
Okay, so, and I just want to just share with you, like, there's some things that are out there right now that are initiatives that have been started, that I think are just really important that, we've kind of made that commitment. So we have the, Marshall Middle School SRO position. That was a grant-funded position, and we're moving off of that grant now. So that's kind of that next phase with that. We have the Marshall High School work with the Brown Center. We have, Mr. Burnell very eloquently talked about, hey, we're going to take this grant. We're going to need to sustain some of these things. So they're money through the Brown Center. So there's some of these initiatives that I'm trying to use that lens of giving those experiential learning opportunities that you've talked about as a board.
Yeah.
At the same time, trying to understand fiscally, how do we do all of these things? And so what my plan is to really focus on, kind of the 4 goals for the year that we have. I really want to use data to be able to show why the decisions are being made. And then at that point in time, when I give the board, and turn the budget over to all of you, if there are things you want me to create, and I mentioned this to Heather in the F&F meeting, is that we can certainly create a menu of, like, what does this cost to do this? What is this, what does this look like? And so there may be some of those things that come up along the budget process that you might like to go, like, to investigate. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the tenor of the discussion in our workshops over the budgets,
Okay.
typically, right?
Yeah.
So-
And I will say, and I think we all feel the same way, but, the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey data is really some data that makes you pause.
Mhm.
And so let's look at that as some of the things that we're looking at.
Yep.
Obviously, student achievement data is really important that we look at to see what we're doing with, one of the areas that we've addressed, in the past is that, if a kid struggles in Marshall Middle School math, what do we do? And so those are some areas that I'm trying to be able to work through right now and get some ideas around how we're going to manage that going forward. So
Right.
we'll kind of consolidate all of those things and be able to kind of build a plan.
Yeah.
So-
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to add, like, if you could consider, and I know you always do consider this when you're making up the budget, but the taxpayers, and, just kind of, I understand that the cost of resources is going through the roof,
Yep.
and that we're going to have to support that, but then on the other hand, it's also affecting the community members. So, I think
Yep.
we really need to have that, like, front and center. Is trying to see where we can make a little bit of a cut, like maybe the consumable supplies area, might be an area that you could tackle, to sit in and reallocate, which I'm sure you'll do all of those things, but I just wanted to make sure I sounded
Yeah,
that piece of
absolutely.
concern.
And I think one of the things that's been interesting, and if you look at our budget over the last 5 years or 10 years, we used to spend around 68 to 70% of our money was in personnel. When we look at it now, we're getting closer to that 80% mark. We're not there yet, but like, you can see that we, like, those, I feel like, when I take this student-centered approach very seriously, and so I look for every nickel and dime that I can find, that level of depth. It is hard when you have expenses that are going up, and so it really does come down to, what does 13.6% savings look like in electricity? What is the cost analysis of doing the LED lights versus the cost of electricity? Like, those things are all really important. At the same time, how do we balance that financial piece with, student safety, student health? Those are types of things that we're just really trying to look at, and maybe things that we can't do today, but certainly are going to kind of be on that agenda. And so what I've done in the past is kind of given you here's kind of a 10-year or 5-year snapshot of facilities-wise what it is. I'd like to try to give you a sense of maybe things that maybe aren't in the budget right now, but I just think we need to kind of keep in mind as we kind of go forward over the next 5 years, because I think things are evolving very quickly. And so just being able to kind of create a plan for that. Does that make sense to everybody?
I guess, like on the health and wellness viewpoint, I would throw out, like, my dream would be some kind of health center in the high school. This is like, but some kind of more robust counseling and health center where we can support the students on a larger scale and potentially even family members or, students from other schools, like middle school, elementary school. If they don't have access to mental health, how can we support the community in that way?
And that's part of when I mentioned having the meeting with the social workers. I don't think it was any of our intent to be able to say that as a social worker that you're going to create one-on-one counseling relationships for the next 6 years with kids.
Right.
That's not our role as a school.
Right.
That being said, there may be groups that you run over the course of years, and what does that look like? And so really talking about what that next step is, and so I mentioned it before, and I will mention it again, is that we have done some research into, what does insurance billing look like? What are there other options that are out there for us, and trying to kind of go down that path to see where that is. And because if we start doing the one-on-one counseling, where's the equitability standpoint? So why would Jen get to have the free counseling, but I don't get that, and I have to do so? And so then we start talking about, implicit bias and systematic bias, and so I think those are things that we just need to be really mindful of. And so that's why I just want to be really reflective right now where we're at, create a plan going forward. I will say at the same time that I have asked Heidi to talk to Noble, who used to have a student health center, to be able to talk a little bit about what they're doing with that. That's evolved a little bit. If we go back 5 years ago or so, and I may be, Joe, I think you and I might have been the only ones in the room at that time, but we did have a pretty lengthy conversation about a virtual health center working through York Hospital
Yes.
years ago, and I think at that point in time, we backed away from that as a district. I'm not sure even if those options exist, but those are things that we can talk about as we start to kind of think about this, because this is a really big issue, and it's hard as a school as to what's our role in it. And I think trying to define that is really tricky at times. And as a person, you want to help everybody, and so we have to be able to find kind of what we can do and what makes the most sense financially.
Right. Yeah, is there a way that, or maybe someone on your staff could look into like the telehealth options for schools? I know that's something I'm looking into for my school, and it's just a small.
We have a doctor that we work through York Hospital already. We have to have that, so we certainly can look in to see what options are out there for telehealth right now.
But like open to like everyone, like
Yeah.
it's like basically you get charged per head.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we certainly can look into that. I don't know what we're gonna find. I mean, things have evolved tremendously with the pandemic, and so the idea of a virtual, doctor's appointment 5 years ago, you would've been like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to a virtual appointment, so that definitely is different, than it is. Like, I always think of the example of, I was talking to David about it the other day. When you go to Walmart and certain places, there isn't cashiers anymore. Everything's self-scanned, and you would have thought 10 years ago, what do you mean? Like, you check out, this is what you do, And so I think, things have evolved, and so, I can ask Judy to look into that a little bit for us and be able to kind of come back with some information. So, I just want you to know where my head is right now as we go into this budget process, because it is a tricky time. I don't know, as Joe mentioned, hopefully Monday or Tuesday of next week, we'll kind of get that ED 279 to be able to kind of see where we're at. I know that I read in the paper, like everybody else, that the $101 million is going to be put into education over the next 2 years. I don't know what that looks like, and I don't know how that's targeted.
Right.
And so there's a lot of questions that go into that. Again, and I also don't know the implications of really seeing the free reduced lunch numbers decreasing across the state because of the meals piece, how that's going to be managed on the state level. So it'll just be interesting. So those factors are all really important. Once I find that information out, I will share kind of how the state achieved that, which does, just to remind everybody, is that it's not just the money that we get from the state. What happens with that is they fluctuate the mill rate to be able to create that revenue for the state, and so that impacts our two communities very differently. And so I think 2 years ago, Ryan, it was the oddity where it was basically percentage increase was about the same statistically, which doesn't happen very often, whereas last year I think it was like a 3.8% increase for South Berwick, and it might have been like a 1.4-ish in that ballpark for Elliott. And so I think those are factors that we don't control, but it's important because it adversely impacts our communities. So, well, I shouldn't say adversely impacts them. It does impact our communities differently. So, any other questions?
Just one thought that I had, of course, the mental health thing at the forefront for me. It feels like it speaks to our core values, it speaks to our mission statement, it speaks to the data, all says that is something that we as a district are supposed to value. And so I would like to see that somewhere. And even if that, like, are we just doing whack-a-mole, that as the problem comes up, we just keep trying to deal with the problem, and could money be sort of funneled into yoga or meditation or some sort of prevention or strategies throughout the grades that could help? So maybe it could give kids skills earlier on rather than just keep treating it once it's
And I
crisis.
think part of it, so philosophically, I think that your allied arts are you forget the importance that they play in culture. as an allied arts teacher, I always felt like there was a responsibility that I had the gift, that I got to see every student in that building over the course of the year. I'm the only teachers in the building that have that. So whether you're 8 white, 6 purple, it didn't make a difference. I saw everybody. And so you can truly help build that culture. And so I believe that, and I also believe that part of helping these situations is we have to educate kids about how to make decisions, right? Decision making. And so we have a gap right now in our Great Works School when it comes to health education. There's a gap there, 4th and 5th grade. So what's our plan to get to a bridge? And then what's the long-term plan? Those may be very different things, but that, to me, that's the first step. Let's educate. How do we talk about coping mechanisms? How do we talk about good decision making? You know, how do we manage peer pressure? Those are all things I think we have to start talking about, but it starts in the classroom. And then I think that's when our school counselors come in as kind of that next level, and then really our school social workers are really kind of those conduits to be able to get those kids who maybe need a little bit more, some outside resources. And so really trying to understand that process. So I think what I don't want to do is I never want to throw money at a problem, right? So we have a solution. Let's see if the solution is working. Is it going down the road that we want it to go down? Are we getting the results that we want to get? And then let's reassess. And so that's where I think we are right now. And I'm not saying to necessarily that we're taking resources away. What I'm saying is that we need to see if what we're doing is working. Is it the model that we envision? Is it sustainable? So,
Okay, thank you.
does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
Very good.
Annabelle.
All right, so Rowan is not here, but she did do sports and student gov, so I'll read hers first. For sports, track and field has their last regular indoor season meet this week, so good luck to them. Ski team has had its 2 first races of the year this Thursday and Friday after some meets being canceled due to weather and conditions, but it could be predicted that Friday gets canceled due to driving conditions, despite there being snow. The Nighthawks beat Mount Ararat. I don't know how to say that.
You said it right.
Lisbon Morse Hyde Eagles 9-2 on Saturday at Bowdoin College. They also beat the Wyndham Westbrook Bonnie Eagle Trailblazers 2-0 at Dover Ice Arena, and they beat that team again 3-2 in overtime at USM. Congratulations to wrestlers Cody Boubier, who took 3rd, and Aiden Hashem, who took 5th at the Sanford Wrestling Annual Tournament. Girls basketball played and lost to Falmouth 46-34 on Friday, but came back with 2 wins against York 41-33 and Kennebunk 47-41. They now have a record of 6-3. Boys basketball beat Falmouth on Friday 46-43 and York 53-37, but lost to Kennebunk by 1 point 55-54. They now have a record of 8-2. For student gov, very little tonight due to midterms since we're not meeting this week. Student gov has finally finished up, or is finishing up with the mural project. We just need the school counselors to sign off on it. And Eva, our president, and our junior president, Lily Hammond, will be attending the policy meeting on January 25th to bring up dress code issues.
And I'll be here.
Yep. As for extracurriculars, the district band festival, Mr. Gratian, is this Saturday? Music festival is set for this Saturday. The yearbook is fully underway and starting to develop the senior portraits and profiles, as well as planned superlative photos, so we are on track to get that done for April. Junior class officers were selected last week. Kaylee Lynn is the president, and our very own Rowan is one of the co-vice presidents. The production of Frozen is underway, and rehearsals have begun. The last newspaper of the semester is now available, and here are 3 copies for you all to take a look at. I wrote one of them. Civil rights team has finally begun meeting with departments, which is something we have been planning since last year. We've generated some very good and beneficial discussions, and we are also willing to present the presentation to you all if you would like it. I don't know when that would be, but it's something that both the advisor and the group who made the presentation is very interested in doing. And that is all for extracurriculars. And for the community month, which I have been mistaking it for the word communications for the past couple weeks, Advisories have been given information surrounding themes that relate to the overarching communication, or not communications community, and building a stronger sense in the building. Activities such as word walls, identifying love languages, and speed dating. Speed dating where students mingle with one another and practice communicating things about themselves while listening to their partner. And additionally, I just wanted to add this as a shout out to the school counselors. Midterms are going on, and they've been very, very supportive in promoting relaxing activities during advisory periods, which can really help out. Some students are truly taking advantage of it, and it's really great to see. So that is all I have.
Just had two odds and ends I wanted to add. I was really excited to see the job fair that the school councils are advertising at Pratt & Whitney coming up. I just thought that was awesome. Great opportunity that just to be able to, did you want to?
Just a quick thing, she did present to us that show, it was very impressive, and I would support them wanting to put on that same presentation to you all.
Yes.
I wonder if in March, when we have our SEL presentation, we kind of covered some of that tonight. I don't know if you want to substitute that.
How long is the presentation, would you say?
Half hour,
Yeah.
and then whatever
Love to have it at a
questions.
board meeting.
So why don't we do this? Let's kind of look at the board, what we have kind of coming up. The school counseling piece is really important, I think, to hear that part, because we've been putting an incredible amount of resources in that. And so I want to make sure that we hold on to that, but let's see if we
Yes.
can find a way to manage everything.
Yep.
So why don't you and I work together over the next week or so, then
Yep.
when I meet with the chairperson, vice chair on next Friday, that we can have
Yep.
that conversation at that time. Is that
Yes.
okay with everybody?
Yeah.
I can also just send it to you guys, and if you have questions.
I would like, here we go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if what we value is reflected in our time, if we value student voice, let's have you
Yes.
come
Yeah.
and present,
That's-
right?
okay.
Like, I think that would be awesome,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so if that's what, that's
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
important.
yes.
Okay.
Let's actually hear it.
Yeah.
So don't kill the punchline. Like,
Yeah.
Hold on to it. The other thing, I just want to mention this is, Friday is inclement weather. There's a really interesting trend that happens is that people are now more and more often canceling the night before. Obviously, if it looks like a bad storm, that's something that I would do. I'm just very uncomfortable doing that, just to be
Yeah.
totally frank. That being said, I also communicate pretty in-depth with both DPW departments, and one of the issues just to be mindful of is that holding out those decisions sometimes when a storm is imminent puts an additional strain on the DPW departments. And so the quicker we can make that decision, sometimes that allows them to be able to plan accordingly. So if we hold out until 5:30 in the morning and they're going to hit the roads at 2 o'clock because they think that school's going to be running, that elongates the time that they're on the road sometimes. And so I just want to be mindful of that communication. And just I think it's also important to note that if we have school, just remind families that if they ever feel uncomfortable because of the weather, please communicate that with the building. They're welcome to stay home, and we would excuse that absence. And so I'm not saying I'm not canceling school. I don't want anybody to read into it. What I'm saying is that this isn't a perfect science, and my job is to keep everybody safe and try to keep that as best I can. And that's a daunting task at times, but also parents have that responsibility if they want to take that accountability for their own child to do that. That's great, certainly, and I respect that and want to be able to support that. The last part of this is that in the event that there's a storm in the morning, that doesn't necessarily mean that afternoon activities would be canceled. So a storm may be over by 11, so
Yep.
from our mindset, my mindset is that if a storm's still bad at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, that doesn't help us, because even with a 2-hour delay, our buses are going to be on the road at 8:30 or 8:20. So if the roads are still
Yeah.
bad, then it's not safe,
Yep.
it's not safe. So that really just buys us an additional 2-hour window. And the 2-hour window doesn't stop at 9:30, the 2 hours, it doesn't start at 9:30, it starts at really at like 8:20, 8:15. And
Yep.
so that's the tricky part. And so, but weather could be very different at 8:30 in the morning than it is at 11 or 12. And so just trying to hold on. Obviously, safety is important as well as I just said, but just so people are aware of that. So it may be like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. School is canceled, but there's still a game at 7 o'clock. I think we just try to be very mindful about keeping people safe, but just being wise about student time as well. So that concludes my report.
Makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annabelle. We have no correspondence this week or 2 weeks upon which to report. That brings us to the report of the committees. Finance and Facilities did meet earlier this evening. I'll do a quick rundown on the numbers on the finance part. The financial summary, December was the second of our three payroll months this year. So against what would be a flat 12-month budget, it looks like we're a little bit overspent because we've had our three payroll months already. Our cash balance is still in good shape, though. Revenues are running a little bit behind expenditures, but we're expecting that that's all going to even out over the next few months. The revenue anticipation note that we took out in the hope we wouldn't have to use it, it looks like we probably won't have to use it, though there's still an open question as to whether, because we do have to pay a small penalty on having taken the note out to begin with, whether there may be a need in the next few months, so we'll keep an eye on that. Adult education, we had our annual payment into that from the state, which has now put us at a positive balance of something like $30,000, and we'll spend that down over the course of the rest of the year. Adult education typically lands right around zero by the end of the year, which is where we want it to be. Food services we do not yet have the December numbers in. So through November, it was slightly negative. It's a little bit more negative, excuse me, with what we think is going to be a slight loss in December. So we'll keep track of that going forward. The federal grant money for Title I and local entitlement is starting to come in now, so that negative balance is starting to come back up a little bit. So again, we keep track of that over time. All of the 21-22 money has now come in on the grants, and so that's all closed out, and we're getting the money in for the 22-23 year. Yeah, cash flow projection, we're in a good place. That's pretty much it for the numbers. I don't think I missed anything important. Kate, you sat in for Rebecca too, right?
Yeah, I did sit in. I can do part of it, and then if you want to fill in where.
Sure.
So for the facilities update, we talked about the mold situation at the middle school a little bit. We are still communicating with the insurance company and looking for full reimbursement on the cost of that. It's unclear how much is going to be covered or not. We have MSMA advocating for us for the reimbursement, so we're still waiting to hear back on that. John already covered the issue with the faucets. We had 5 to 6 faucets that popped. There was one at the high school that obviously the water's been shut off, so that has not been retested, but all of the other ones have been updated and have passed.
Yeah, that's the one out at the stadium, right?
Yes, the one at the stadium. We are in the snowplow RFP process that has begun. We have 6 interested parties, but we're currently waiting on bids, so we'll see what happens with that. Regarding the MSMA sewer claim, we've submitted an insurance claim on that, and we should get a refund of around $44,000. That happened this last July. A pipe was punctured during some work, and so that had to be repaired. So it will cost us some money, but we will hopefully, we'll get our refund of about $44,000. I can't remember how much that was going to end up costing us. I didn't write that down, but
The project?
the project.
I think initially to have it fixed was around 60,000, is that right?
So it ended up costing us around $20,000. The transportation shortage continues. We have recently had several people out on kind of longer-term absences and some short-term absences, but we've had lots of support. We've had the support that we've needed from other faculty, which has been amazing. It's really hard to get people to drive the buses, and it's about a 6-month process to get people certified, and then there's another 6 to 7 week turnaround to get people road tested. So it's not something that can happen very quickly. We also received a check from Efficiency Maine for around $51,000 for our LED lighting upgrades, which we were expecting, but it's nice to have the check. And It was reported that we are using 13% less energy because of the LED upgrades, which is fantastic.
Mhm.
And then I don't know if we
Oh,
can
yeah,
talk
and then the food service update, they're looking into getting 2 new dish machines for EES and the Great Work School. They're also looking into line upgrade quotes, for the elementary school, Central. Let's see, oh yeah, they are, looking into, buying containers to dispense the cereal to reduce our waste in plastic, but they're still exploring that. And then Chartwells has also asked to do some minor upgrades at the high school, like switching the deli station with the hot station just to shorten the lines and the flow of folks. Also looking into getting stand-up tables in the lobby so students can take their breakfast, kind of sit and socialize and eat their food. And then some minor upgrades to the lobby area to allow for additional options to be served, like a coffee bar or something was also being explored. Not to do it, you did a good job.
On the topic of Chartwells, apparently it's National School Board Recognition Month.
Apparently so.
Thank you, Chartwells.
Karen, yes, please.
Yes. Okay, thank you. That's it for Finance and Facilities. Ed Policy next meets on January 25th. That's a week from today, at which time you're going to hear about dress code, I guess.
And that will be here.
That will be
We're
here.
meeting here in the conference room.
Okay,
Yeah.
so those of you on Ed Policy. And then Wellness will next meet on February 1st.
Can I
which
just
is-
give you a quick update on the wellness piece?
Please.
I spoke to Gina, and she is going to share some of the mattering information that she has. She's going to, we're trying to get her in either Monday or the following Monday to meet with our administrators
Mhm.
to do some work in our schools. But the idea would be to kind of take that mattering and be able to do that district-wide kind of presentation for families around, how do we recognize mattering and how can we support that, and how can families recognize that? So,
Mhm. Great. Thank you. Okay, that ends the report of the committees and brings us to new business. We have 2 second reads tonight to talk about. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the second reading of EEA?
I move to approve the second reading and discussion of policy EEA, transportation.
Second, Heather?
There, thank you. No changes from last read. Comments or questions? All in favor? That is 4-0. Thank you very much. And a motion, please, with regard to JEA.
I move to approve the second reading and discussion of policy JEA, compulsory attendance.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Same thing, right? No changes since last time? Any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? That is 4-0. Kate was a little slow getting her hand up.
I wasn't sure if at the highlighted D, section D, if this should be moved over a tab. If you wanted to omit the spaces.
Oh, yeah,
Just for format.
that's a formatting thing.
Right here?
Yeah, just
Yep.
format, yeah.
Yeah, the D should be in line with the C.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, and that is the end of new business. This says building administrator's check-in, but we've already put these 2 gentlemen
Yes.
through a
Yes,
Check in and
decent
then
amount of
some.
work tonight. I think we'll give them a break.
yes.
Okay,
You're welcome.
very good, thank you. Anything else from the board? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Kate?
I second, Heather?
Heather? All in favor? That is 4-0. We are adjourned. Thank you all.